Welcome to Intersect, a podcast where we find connection in each other's story. Today, I'm with my friend Solo.
Hey.
We got connected years ago, and so that all started in a little town called Worland, Wyoming, in the northern region of Wyoming, north central Wyoming, in the Bighorn Basin. So,
Yeah.
Solo, welcome to Intersect.
Thank you, my
Let's go
brother. Thank
back.
you.
Let's go back. Let's kind of reconnect on how we connected.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Tell us about yourself, a little bit about what you're up to, and then we'll start out at the beginning.
All right. Yeah, man. Everyone calls me Solo. Just a nickname I acquired when I was younger, and taking it back to Worland, Wyoming. Um, my family moved there in like '99, 2000, and that's when our paths crossed
Mm-hmm.
first.
Yeah.
And I was I think about 11, 12 years old at the time when we moved to that town.
Okay.
Beautiful Warren, Wyoming. Yeah.
And you had moved. Where had you come from before coming to Worland?
We were coming from Lubbock, Texas,
Okay.
West
Okay.
Texas. So it was a big change for us for sure. A big change of
Yeah.
scenery because anyone from
Wow.
West Texas or who've been there,
Mm-hmm.
it's flat, nothing but cotton
Okay.
fields. So
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of weather change and whatnot too.
definitely, man, definitely. I do remember like the first week I was there, my lips were chapped.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
Wow.
Definitely
Wow.
different climate changes.
Yeah, and of course, I remember there. I remember moving there because, we got a call from this guy, Jim Brower, who was leading out in the region that and I'm a pastor, so they were in. I was working for this denominational group, and they said we want to send you to Wyoming, 4 churches and a startup church. And when he asked me if I was willing to go there, the first thing he said is, "Are you sitting down?" And then he told me about that. And then we get there, and then we experience the cold and the winter. And
Oh
we had
yeah.
said, God, we want to somehow connect with our neighbors. And we're living on Grace Avenue, and we say this prayer, and first thing we hear music coming through the window, and then we connect over the guitar, and then I met you by
Yeah.
connecting with this guy that was with your mom at the time, and then
Yeah.
it was just like,
Yeah. It
and
was meant to
then
be, man.
that's
It was meant to be. I
yeah,
remember I
yeah,
remember that day. I remember that day like it was yesterday, honestly. I remember my mom's husband at the time. He was out
mm-hmm,
on the porch playing guitar. And
yeah,
I remember I was in the dining room. We had a sliding door, a glass
yeah,
door. And
mm-hmm,
I remember he would sit out there and play. And I remember hearing him talking to somebody. And he was like
mm-hmm,
looking, towards y'all's house.
yeah,
And I do remember
yeah,
seeing you on the other side of the fence.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And you came over shortly with your guitar and y'all started jamming. But
yeah.
that's where it really all started, man, for sure.
Yeah, so I originally connected with him, and then my wife Ingrid eventually connected with your mom, and I think by connecting
Yes.
with your mom, then she connected with you, it seems like. And
And yeah, and you know what? I remember now. Look, it hit me. I remember
mm,
I went next door and asked if I can cut y'all's lawn.
oh really? Trip.
That's how it started, bro.
That is
Uh,
so crazy because you're a landscaper now.
yeah. Yeah. My
Wow.
buddy, my buddy at the time, he told me, he's like, "Hey, we should go cut lawns."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." So I was like, "I can go ask the neighbor." And we did cut your lawn. We cut your guys'
Mm,
yard. And y'all paid like
that's
30
so
bucks or
crazy.
something, 20 bucks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
kids at the time, we were all excited.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, that's how our paths crossed, man, for sure.
Yeah. So what was, I mean, I know what Worland was like for me, but for you growing up, 11-year-old kid, moving to this new area, like what was some of that experience like for you coming to this North Country?
And it was different, and I was nervous. I was nervous
Mm,
because it was a different atmosphere for me. And
mm,
but I embraced it. I was happy. It's some of
yeah.
my happiest times in my life.
Mm,
Um, Going snowboarding, sledding,
mm-hmm,
caroling, just playing in the snow, uh,
mm-hmm,
um, going fishing, and
mm,
I met some really good had some really awesome friends there as well. And yeah, I loved every bit of it. I loved every bit of it, man. I love that town for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything about that experience that you feel like shapes who you are today?
Um, well, yeah, yeah, because in Wyoming is where I started my music journey.
Mm,
That's how I slowly started to get into music.
okay.
But I think that was kind of like a place where I started to find myself. I mean, I was growing up into
Yeah.
a young man at that time, and yeah, a lot of experiences there. I learned how to fish. I learned how to hunt. I learned a lot of
Mm,
life skills in
mm,
that town. A lot
mm,
of people were so dialed into that. Uh,
mm,
a lot of the kids who I hung out with were hunters,
okay.
um, stuff like that. And it was new to me, and
Mm,
I enjoyed every minute of it, man.
mm, okay. So, just some things, life skills and experiences that you had there that um you find yourself looking back to uh, as you would eventually make a shift, what, to the Houston area? I mean, um,
Yeah,
what was the interplay between what you experienced with Worland and then making eventually a life shift? Because I think we knew you guys for a couple years, maybe a
yeah,
year and a half.
couple years, yeah, two
You
years.
know, I remember when our oldest son JJ was born, your family came
Yep,
over to the house, and
yep,
we
yep.
have pictures with you guys. But
Yeah.
yeah, moving forward, what was it like?
Yeah, so we ended up moving from Wyoming, and we ended up moving outside of Houston, and
Hmm.
going from this small mountain community to where you could ride your bikes and
Hmm.
just have fun as a kid to this urban environment. It was a big shift change for me,
Mm.
and I found myself in trouble
Okay.
really quick,
Okay.
because I had to adapt. I had to adapt to this new urban environment. And
Mm.
I remember my first day to school. Um, I was walking and I was nervous. I was scared. I told my mom I didn't want to go. I just wanted to stay home. And I
Mhm.
remember I just, okay, I'm gonna do this. Took off walking to school, and
Mhm.
I encountered a couple guys, and they ended up
Mm.
jumping me. And
Okay.
I think that was my first experience to where I told myself I have to toughen up, and
Mm.
because we're not in this town anymore, the environment it was different. And I think at that moment, a lot of changes started to happen.
So
Uh,
it felt like moving from, like Mayberry to Cabrini Green. Maybe not that extreme, but kind of like it was this contrast between this rural environment and now
yeah,
you're in this kind
yeah,
of
it was
urban.
different. Yeah, it was different, man. Just the atmosphere, the cultures, um, and it was something I had to adapt to, and I
Mhm.
did adapt to it. I was a warrior, I'm a survivor, and I just knew
Mhm.
that I had to dig deep and become stronger,
Yeah.
because the environment will eat you up, and
Mm.
but a lot of negativity and a lot of bad things come with that environment, and I found
Mm.
myself wrapped up real quick. Um,
Mm.
in that lifestyle, man. But it was
Mm.
definitely a big change from moving from that town to
Yeah.
where we moved to, for sure.
Now you say wrapped up in the lifestyle. That wasn't like a overnight thing. That was a progression, would you say?
Yeah, it was definitely a progression. Started hanging out with just the wrong people.
Mhm.
And well, I say wrong people, but they were my people.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like you're looking for connection or something.
yeah, yeah, and when you're in those environments, you try to just connect with what's around you. And as I got older, I started to realize that this crowd wasn't for me. But at that
Mm.
time, I was already wrapped up.
Mhm.
And there was so many times where I knew, I was doing something wrong, and I had to separate myself from those people. But like I said, they were my people. There was who was around me, and it was
Well, and I
just a
think
very dramatic change.
yeah, and it seems like to me because I know like we experienced a move from a rural area in southern Colorado, to this very churched area, right?
Hmm.
And so, like, moving from southern Colorado to this little grove of people that are all share a similar faith and belief system and whatnot, and many of the families, the kids have grown up going through the Christian school here. um it's like they all know each other, and our kids come here and they're trying to break in, and it just felt like well, I remember my son, wanting to fit in with the cool kids,
Yeah,
and yet it was like he wasn't really happy until he just kind of was willing to be friends with the people that wanted to be friends with him.
yeah, yeah,
So when I think about your experience in moving to this urban area, I think probably in their core, everybody I think has something. I mean, we're all created in the image of God. We're all God's children. So I think,
sure.
maybe people are making bad decisions. Maybe because of family backgrounds or environment or circumstance, there's some things in our life that are negative. But my guess is, yeah, you might have known intuitively, man, maybe these aren't the right decisions, but I sure want to experience some
Yeah,
connection. I
you
mean,
you
how would
want
you
you want to
just?
fit in. It's
Hmm.
just what it boils down to. You want to fit in because you have to be part of a group when you live in these environments. You have to
Yeah.
be because there's gangs, there's drugs, there's everything that you hear about, that in these environments, and it's very
Hmm.
much real, and it hits you so fast, that you do find yourself want to hang out with the cool kids, and that's what I thought I was doing, hanging out with the cool
Mm.
kids. But ultimately, it
Hmm.
led me on the path of self destruction because I ended up
Mm.
selling drugs, getting on drugs, started to just
Mm.
just lose myself. And over the
Mm.
years of doing all that and living that way, I hit rock bottom.
Yeah. You know what's crazy about that, without going into details of my own family, is I don't think it's just I think it can happen to anybody. It can happen in
Yeah,
an impoverished environment. It can happen in a wealthy environment.
yeah,
When we're looking for connection and we're just longing for acceptance, that that's that's a real need that we all have, right? We all, I love Johann Hari said this thing. He wrote this book about the history of the drug wars called Chasing the Scream. And he says the opposite of sobriety is not addiction, or no, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And in sobriety is this byproduct of when we find meaningful connection. And
true,
so,
true.
so I just think about, I've seen some stuff even in my own family that I'm like, man, did I mess up as a dad? Did I miss something here? And I
Yeah, and
think,
and I mean, you can't blame yourself for that. I mean, because like you
yeah,
said, the devil works everywhere. He's everywhere. You can be in the
yeah,
most richest areas, and he can still infiltrate. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's there, but I think all we can do is just be the best. And because we're not perfect, um,
hmm,
and we're gonna learn, and we have to grow. And for me, it was an experience that I had to go through, and I think we all have to go through those struggles and those tribulations to become who we are now, to become the men we are now, the leaders we are now. We had
hmm,
to face all that to be where we're at, and I'm extremely grateful for that.
hmm,
And
right.
just blessed.
So it's almost like, because I don't know, maybe there was a time, when we met, I'm not even sure you would be expressing it the way you are now. Like, I had to go through that. That was important, whatever. But I think when we become aware of God's activity in our life, like He's our Father, He's our Father whether we know it or not. But when we
Yeah,
begin to come aware of His activity in our life, we realize, wow, even even though I might have made a misstep here or a misdirection there, God was still working in my behalf. He was still working
Yeah,
for my best. I mean,
for
ha
sure.
so you said you were looking for connection, you were seeking something, um, got in with some people that were also seeking something, but the collective combination of that wasn't always the best. It wasn't always healthiest.
No,
It
not at
led to some
all.
dark places. Um, Talk a little bit about where that took you, but also how God took you beyond that, or how took you through that, or shaped you. So where did it take you, and then how did God shape you?
Honestly, man, it took me to the bottom. It took me to the
Mm,
trenches. It took me to my lowest point of my life.
mm,
It hurt me beyond. I mean,
mm.
it damaged me. It damaged my soul.
Yeah.
Um, and when I reached that point where I wanted change,
Mhm.
I knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
I knew I had to make this move, or I was gonna be consumed by this.
Mm,
And I just couldn't allow that to happen, and
mhm.
I had a baby boy on the way, and I knew I had to make a different choice in my life and to get
Yeah.
better. And
Yeah.
I think that's when I decided to start reaching out. I decided to
Mm,
start to find help, and I was like, who can I hit up?
mm,
Who can I find to help me on this journey? And
mm,
my higher power led me to you,
mm.
and we ended up reconnecting, and the journey continued. The journey
Yeah.
continued because we ended up moving away from Wyoming. We
Right.
moved, and my life changed, and you guys were like my second parents, you and Miss Ingrid. Um, I did everything with y'all,
Hmm, hmm,
from the Pathfinders, from you guys just being there for me. And it's something that I
hmm,
cherish till this day, till I'm
hmm,
34 years old, and
hmm,
it it sits in just in my heart because at the time I was a very lost boy.
hmm,
My
hmm,
mom was lost at the time,
hmm,
dealing with marriages and dealing with the move, and it was so much to deal with that I was a lost boy.
hmm,
And when I met you guys, everything kind of started to fall in place for me there.
hmm,
I felt
hmm,
like I had somebody to go to, and I would
hmm,
go over to y'all's house, and Miss Ingrid
hmm,
would make me lunch and treat me like
hmm,
just like I was her own child, and I
hmm.
never experienced that in my life, and it was the best feeling in the world, man. And I love you guys so much for that experience, for allowing me to just be a part of y'all's lives and taking me in because I was a rough looking kid at the time too,
Hmm, hmm,
so I wasn't just this, leave it to Beaver,
mhm,
oh no,
mhm.
you guys looked past that and you brought me in, and God brought it back full circle for a reason because I was needing help and I needed somebody in my life, and we reconnected, man. We reconnected back in
Well, yeah, it was 2016, and, the thing
yeah,
is this is what I've learned over the years is that sometimes we think maybe as Christians, like, "Oh, we're gonna help somebody or we're gonna save them." And honestly, I think God brings people into our lives to help us and to save us.
I believe it. I believe it.
Like
And at that time, you couldn't tell
like
me that. Like,
right, but
I
I'm
had no
saying like
connection.
yeah, but I'm saying like God brought you into our lives as a part of the
Oh,
saving work he was doing in us.
yes,
Like
man, for sure,
I have learned so much from you about what it means to listen, about what it means to be real and honest with your story,
for
about what it
sure.
means to be vulnerable. You've taught me so much. And even like, you know, when you reached out in 2016, um, you know, I mean, I remember more about your mom and your mom's husband. And I knew we did stuff with you, but at that
Yeah,
time in your life, it was like Miss Ingrid was the one that was like really
she
driving the
was.
car,
She
you know?
was. She
But
was.
then for
Yeah,
whatever reason, you reach out to me in 2016,
yeah,
and then it
yeah,
was just like, wow, then God gave us this friendship.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that. And Miss Ingrid, yeah. So back in Wyoming, yeah, I was more connected with Miss Ingrid.
Mhm.
Um, but because she was helping me with like school projects,
Mhm.
and she was like just keeping me in line and just making sure I was doing what I was doing. And I learned so much from her. And you know, I'm very grateful because I never forget her helping me with my homework. And
Yeah.
I wasn't getting that from, you know, at my own home.
Yeah.
So it speaks, you know, it speaks what kind of person Miss Ingrid is, and you know, you guys are, because you guys were willing to take me in and just help me out, man. And those are some of the best experiences in my life, and something that I cherish till this day, you know, uh, because you guys never looked at the dirty, raggedy haired, chunky boy at the time, you know. You just looked
Mhm.
past it and brought me into y'all's home with open arms.
Mhm. Well, and I think, you know, something that we've learned through the years too is what may feel like a normal life for some people feels like it's just maybe what they long for. You know,
True,
it could
man.
almost like it can almost feel boring. It's like, oh wow, we sit down for family supper and we go to this thing called Pathfinders where it's kind of like a co-ed Boy Scout and Girl Scout if nobody knows what it is, and you learn to tie knots and you do little projects. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
you could do a guitar class, you could do, I mean,
yeah,
they have all these different honors and you get patches, whatever. And you can look at that stuff and say, well, this is kind of dull and boring. And we had a podcast episode with this gal, Ashley, and she went to this school down in Arkansas. And she says, just being there in the dorm and having this dean that embraced me, and I'm coming from this environment, she's like, where, you know, I experienced trauma and abuse at
yeah.
home. And like
Hmm.
going to this school was just like running away and finding a safe haven. And this dean that embraced me, and she just treated me like I was normal.
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
just created a space of safety. And sometimes I think we got to do some huge thing. And sometimes it's just like inviting people into our space.
Exactly, man. And I learned that from you guys. Honestly, I learned to be to when I've come across situations where, you know, I could help people, and I
Hmm.
do my best to help people, because I remember when I was just a young kid needing help, needing direction. You know, to you know to white folk next door embraced this Mexican kid. Um,
Hmm.
and that was a big lesson for me, to be able to be open to everybody and anybody, and just to hear people out and just do what we can to help out. You don't, like you
Hmm.
said, you guys were just being nice to me, you know, like you guys were just
Hmm.
doing what was right, and but it was life changing for me as a grown man.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I'm 34 years old, going on sobriety time in my life, and
Hmm.
those moments hit me now more than ever.
Hmm.
um because I reflect on those moments, and I'm grateful for those moments, and those moments is what makes me who I am today, and try to lead that example for my son, for my children,
Hmm.
to be able to be open to people and to just love people. And at the end of the
Yeah,
day, we're brothers and sisters, and we got to
that's
help
it.
each other at the end of the day, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And to help each other, expecting nothing in return, to help each other, not like, oh, I'm doing you this big favor, to realize that in helping the guy next to us, like, we're just as desperate.
For
You
sure,
know,
man. For
I'm
sure.
just
We all need
like,
help, you know. We all
yeah,
need help. We all need
yeah,
guidance,
yeah.
and as long as we're seeking, and we're trying to do our best to just keep the faith, and like I
Hmm.
said, you don't have to be this over religious person to have faith, and
Yeah.
to do the right thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
Just do
it.
the right thing, have some faith, and the right people will come along in your
Hmm.
life. And I felt like my higher power put y'all in my life at
Hmm.
that time for a
Yeah.
reason, because it came back full circle in
Yeah.
2016 when
Yeah.
we ended up reconnecting again.
Right.
And I felt like it was that journey picking up from where we left off, only I was older I
Yes.
was going through some things in my life,
Yeah.
but I felt like it felt right to reach out to
Mm,
you and kind of rekindle that relationship, because at the
mm,
end of the day, we have to reach out when you're struggling.
yeah. And when you reached out, and I remember it was just in 2016, you were like Facebook, you were like, man, I'm going to be having a boy coming. We're going to, my girl and I are going to be having a baby, my wife.
Yep. Yep.
And, and, and I was like, man, congratulations. And saw
Oh
that
yeah.
one night you had practiced sober, and we just had like this brief little exchange.
Yeah.
And then about a year goes by, February 2017. One morning you come to mind. I look you up. I see that your son Ezekiel had come, and I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, man, look at that little man there, and sent you a little message. And then in
Yeah.
March, like the end of March, you reach out to me, and I remember that what you said is what you had just been coming off of, like you had already this way back in 2016. There had been this desire in you
Yes.
through
Yes.
that post of practicing sober, that you're like sensing, I need something different. You'd started
Yes.
out looking for acceptance way back when you moved back to Texas, gotten in with some people, well-meaning people, but misguided. That
Exactly.
took a path, led to addiction, and you reach out to me in the end of March, and you're like, man, I'm coming off of a long haul addiction, and
Yep.
with just trying to detox and whatnot, i'm
Yep.
I'm I've had horrible anxiety and panic attacks and whatnot. Tell us a little bit about where you were at that time, and what you recollect of that time when we're
Man,
reconnecting at the end of March 2017.
I was at the lowest point of my life. I was at the
Hmm.
lowest point of my life, desperate for change, desperate for help. I was already had implanted like the idea of getting sober.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and uh, practicing sober was a big thing for me.
Hmm.
For those who don't know, I'm a musician, and I have my own band, and I was always fueled on alcohol and drugs just to make that
Hmm.
happen. Um,
Hmm.
rock
Hmm.
star mentality type stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it drove me down to the bottom, and I had already decided, look, it's time to change. It's time to be a better person, because my music, yeah, it's rock, metal, but I've always felt like I was trying to give a positive message, right?
Hmm.
And for
Hmm.
me, I didn't want to be this hypocritical person. So I
Okay.
was like, yo, I need to change. I need to be better. I need to get right. And, I reached out to you. All hope was gone. I
Hmm.
mean, I was telling you it's too late for me.
Yeah.
I was
Right.
experiencing all this detox. I'm coming off of, doing drugs, cocaine and drinking alcohol every day. I
Hmm.
mean, every day for a long time.
Hmm.
And the detox was some of the worst things that I experienced. Anxiety, depression. It hit me like a ton of bricks, man. I was down, 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 dancing with the devil. But at that moment, I knew I had to reach out. And I had already reached out to you once prior.
Hmm.
And, that kind of already had like, oh man, I need to hit up somebody. And it came
Yeah.
to my boom, like God put it in my head, hit up Jim. I hit you up, and from there, man, you embraced me. You
Hmm.
didn't judge me. You
Hmm.
never put me down. You never made me feel like I was less of a man or less of a human.
Hmm.
Never, not once, on this journey that me and you have been on.
Well,
But
and
yeah,
I think the thing is you weren't, you you were being the real man at that moment,
it
and
was tough, man.
that God was giving you a courage and strength to
Yeah,
do what, because of the anxiety, because of the latent shame, because of all the stuff that we experience coming out of addiction, coming out of deep places of shame, all that stuff we experience. It takes a lot of courage
it does, man.
to
It does,
just
and
reach out.
for sure, and much respect and love to people who make that decision to to
Yeah.
to reach out And a buddy of mine told me something years ago, uh, an older gentleman. He's like, "You're never gonna know unless you ask."
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
like some people don't want to ask for help,
Yeah.
and you're never gonna know what your life can be if you don't ask for help. Because if you never ask and you never get on that right path, you're gonna stay doing what you're doing, and that path, that wrong path you're on, is gonna lead you
Mm-hmm.
to somewhere that you don't want to be.
And
And for me, it was reaching out, being vulnerable, and that's
mm-hmm.
exactly what I did. And I
Mm-hmm.
encourage anybody else who's going through
Yeah.
that. You have to be vulnerable, and you have to put your heart on your sleeve and reach out to people, because there are people who will help you.
Mm-hmm. And when you
They
reached
will.
out, like Alex, when you reached out, you gave yourself a gift, but you gave me a gift. And you gave God a gift because you allowed him to show up in a way that we both went, "What?"
Yeah.
I remember you told me, it's like in the conversation, it was kind of like it started out like, I just feel like it's too late. All the stuff that I've done and
Yep.
things that I'm ashamed of and blah, 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 blah. And yet, and then you said this one thing that just, I've never forgotten. You say, you know, um, my friends, they don't know my real name. They all call me Solo.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
and because and you have, ever since I've known you, you've had natural leadership gifts, and so you brought that to your band Reckless High. You brought that to the way that you interacted with people in the scene that you were in. You had some natural leadership gifts. I remember you saying, man, I was the guy that would make sure the dope was at the party. i
For
i, I
sure.
made things, I made sure things happened, and you orchestrated gigs for your band, and you did all of that stuff. And you're like, yeah, my friends don't know my real name. And just this thought flashed in my mind, and I'm like, this seems a little cheesy, but I don't know, here goes. And looking back, I feel like God was in that moment. But I was just like, well, Alex, maybe like maybe you need to let the Lord be Solo, and you could ride shotgun.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
for
then
sure. Yeah.
and then you were just like, man, I was just talking to a friend just a week ago, and they were like, Alex, you need to let Jesus be in the driver's seat in your life. And you were like, and I told that person, yeah, and I could ride shotgun. Like when we
Yep.
experience that, as you look back on that, you think back on that in that moment of exchange between us, I mean, what did you experience in that moment when I think we both realized, because I didn't know anything. I mean, at the time I was just like, you know what? I don't know. I didn't know anything of that conversation. This is totally
Yeah,
God, Alex. What
for
did you
sure.
experience from your side of the thing when that happens? Because I was just, it wasn't me. I'm just, the words are coming out of my mouth, but I wouldn't have
Yeah.
known to say that.
No, you wouldn't have. I never told you about it, and when
Yeah.
you said that, it was like, whoa. It was a moment for me where I knew uh that God was really trying to direct me,
Mm,
and really trying to show me that, hey, I'm here, and
yeah.
these connections are gonna happen, these moments are gonna happen. And I was new to it, man. So like
Yeah.
when you experience those and you're new to
Yeah.
it and you never experienced it, oh man,
Mm,
it's a
mm,
feeling that I wish that a lot of people would experience, because
yeah.
it can be life changing and it can
Yeah.
put you on that right path. But yeah, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was telling her like, man, I'm with anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to live because I'm not doing drugs. My body needs it. I'm just processing everything,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm losing my mind. I felt
Yeah.
like I was just out of body all the time.
Yeah.
And she said, well, it's because, you've been driving, and your body's like a car, and you've just been driving it, you just
Mm-hmm.
driving it down, wrecking it. And,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you need to sit shotgun,
Mm. Mm.
and let, how everybody let Jesus take the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and then it was
Carry
funny
Underwood. Jesus, take the wheel.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we ended up having that conversation. I don't know if it was a couple days or whatever
Yeah.
after, but we ended up
Yeah.
having it, and you
Mm-hmm.
said that, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
but that conversation set the tone for my journey, because ever since I've been sitting shotgun.
Mm.
I've
Mm.
been sitting shotgun, and I tell, I pray to God, and just say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm following. I'm not this religious guy. I'm not this
Yeah.
religious nut. This no,
Yeah.
I have my morals. I have my standards,
Mhm.
and I just like, hey, I needed I needed that moment.
Mm.
And
Mm.
a lot of people will, and one of my friends calls it like a Jesus moment, God moment.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I feel like it's needed because it can be life changing. And I had that moment right there, and hey, I've been sitting shotgun ever since. And
Yeah.
2 years and 7 months,
Wow,
two
yeah.
2 years and
Yeah.
7 months off alcohol and cocaine. Cocaine was my drug
Yeah.
of choice, and
Yeah.
hey, hey,
And I mean, like when I think about it, you say 2 years and 7 months, but for me, in a way, your sobriety began in 2016.
yeah,
It
yeah,
began
yeah,
with that rehearsal, and
yep,
because, you know, I don't know what the figure is exactly. I've heard that people, when they're looking to pursue sobriety, they can relapse like up to 7 times or maybe more, you know? And I know through our journey,
yep.
together, that
Oh yeah,
friendship, we've journeyed together through relapse. I mean,
yes, we
and I'll
have.
say for myself, like, hard substances that haven't been my deal, but I got on the scale this morning. I'm like, oh crap, I'm up again,
Yeah. Well,
or I've really battled with anxiety. I come home, and if I'm not doing well, I'll be up late, just binging on YouTube or binging on shows, and all of that's a
yeah,
form of medication. I think
for sure.
we all struggle with disconnecting from life and disconnecting from God and disconnecting from people that matter to us, whether it's a substance or a show or a dead end relationship. We can all turn to someone or something when God's really saying, man, if you want to ride shotgun, get ready for the ride of your life.
Get ready. Get ready. Yeah. And you're right. I feel like my sobriety did start in 2016. That's when I started to make that decision of like, yo, I need to do some things different here. Um, but you know what, man? It's been a blessing, and I'm grateful that I got through it. And it's really never
Yeah.
over. We speak about relapse, and
Yeah.
you've experienced almost every relapse that I've had,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was more than probably, we could count on
Yeah.
our hands. It's
Yeah.
a lot of relapses uh throughout the journey, but each time I would relapse, I would learn something. I
Yeah.
would
And
learn that this is not it. This is
and
not it, man.
I mean, we could go back, probably take some notes and do some other shows. I mean, there were ways that God showed up for, I want to say us, because I feel like in getting to journey with you, it's been an honor and a blessing and a privilege.
Same
Like,
here, brother.
it's like what God has done in your life is by extension what he's been doing in my life. Like there is a healing that collectively we've experienced as we've walked through stuff together.
Yeah, we've learned a lot through this journey, and I think a lot of people can look at this journey and learn a lot. And it's all about connecting with people. Like
Mm-hmm.
me and you, we're different people as far
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
color and
Mm-hmm.
culture, religion, whatever,
Yeah,
but we're human,
that's right.
and we can still connect on a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different levels. And you and me, we kind of we don't even look at that aspect of
Mm-hmm.
things of religion, culture, nothing. We're just two people just trying to help
Yeah.
each other and journey to on take this journey together. And it's a blessing, and I'm very grateful for this journey because, man, I think about all those times when I would relapse, and who would I call?
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
call my brother Jim,
Yeah.
and we would talk through it. We would work through it. We would pray about it, and it
Mm-hmm.
always put me on that track again to like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you did that. It happened. It's over, but you're still loved. We keep pressing and we keep fighting, and
Yeah.
you get to these
In
moments where you have a lot of clean time under you, and you look back and reflect at those moments, and you're so grateful for that.
And to have the opportunity to say to you after a moment of relapse, you know what, Alex? You're still loved. You're still here. I'm not going anywhere. God's not going
Man,
anywhere.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
in those moments, to be able to say that to you is then to hear it from God. Like, I don't know, like, I just know there's this thing sometimes when the words that are coming out of my mouth, sometimes it's like they're almost more for me than the person in front of me. And it's
yeah,
almost like, and you've probably experienced that. I think you shared a conversation, we won't go into that, but where a family member reached out to you and it was a little bit tense at first, but then you realize, wait a second, I'm ministering to her. And in
yeah,
ministering to her, it's like God was ministering through you
yeah,
and
yeah,
ministering to you as you were
yeah,
ministering to her.
for sure.
So that I think,
Yeah, 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 for
but
sure, for
in
sure.
closing, is there anything that you would want to say either as a prayer or a blessing for somebody that may be listening to this or watching this that you just want to leave to maybe give some courage and hope?
Um, I just want to say, just keep on fighting, keep
Mm-hmm.
on pressing forward. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say keep on fighting, fight for your peace, fight for
Mm-hmm.
your love, your joy, your happiness,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of things in this world that want to take that from you. And it can happen so fast, so quick. And by the time you blink, you're down in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
So I just say to keep on fighting. Don't ever give up. Love yourself. Love
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Treat yourself right. Give your body what it needs to prosper and grow. Don't. I want to be an example uh, for people. Don't do what I did. Don't go
Mm-hmm.
down the path that I did, because I had a choice, and we have choices. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're listening, and you can, if you take anything from this message, is that you can overcome anything. Even if we do make those wrong decisions, because we're not perfect people. We're not. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna make some wrong decisions in our life, but we can overcome it as long as we are seeking.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, being able to have those moments with people like me and you have had
Mm-hmm.
our moments, that's where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at in my life. To be able to help people who are seeking, put them on the right path, because before 2016 I wasn't seeking. The only thing I was
Mm-hmm.
seeking was a high,
Mm-hmm.
but when I
Mm-hmm.
made that decision to change and clean up, I
Mm-hmm.
started seeking the most high. You feel
Oh,
me?
there we go. And the Most High was seeking you all the way back in Wyoming and before.
Exactly,
There's a
exactly.
scripture that says, where God's speaking to the prophet Jeremiah, and he says, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you and I set you apart for a sacred purpose. And so for
Beautiful.
me, for you, brother, and for those listening, God has set you apart. He has a most high purpose for you, that even your greatest reckless high, if you will, there's there's a there's a greater high. There's a true
Yeah.
recklessness of living on the edge with your maker that surpasses anything that you've experienced to this point.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
so I'm just gonna do the outro music, and listener, we want to say to you, may you experience the God that my brother Alex has experienced. May
Amen.
you find him coming into your experience, revealing himself, inviting you to ride shotgun, and may you experience the reckless high of your life with him.
Amen.
Blessings,
Amen.
friend, until we meet again.